All right, welcome back to the program, and it's Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service. Now, since 2017, JAM says some tertiary institutions have been granting admissions through what it called the condonement of illegal admissions without registration numbers, and that it has discovered that more than 700,000 of such admissions had been granted by tertiary institutions across board, and that, JAM says, it's fraudulent. So JAM has decided to take a decisive measure to stop these fraudulent activities allegedly committed by our tertiary institutions, and that decision was taken at its recent policy meeting. And that's our focus today on Good Morning Nigeria. But first, let's listen to our background report put together by Ibrahim and Amidu.
Every year, thousands of students seek admission into Nigerian universities. However, some individuals find ways to bypass the system, gaining admission through illegal means. This not only undermines the integrity of the education system, but also deprives deserving students of their rightful place. The Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board, JAMB, recently uncovered a platform that had regularized illegal admissions granted to students between 2017 and 2020, resulting in thousands of students being illegally admitted into Nigerian universities. Taking decisive action, JAM issued an ultimatum to universities and other tertiary institutions, giving them a 1-month deadline to disclose details of all candidates they illegally admitted before 2017. This move aims to enhance transparency and fairness in the admissions process. As JAM continues to checkmate illegal admissions, today's guests on Good Morning Nigeria will discuss how some institutions manage to operate below JAM's radar, admitting candidates outside the approved central admissions processing system platform.
Thank you, Ibrahim Danamidu, for that background report. And to do justice to our conversation this morning, we already have our guest seated to discuss checkmating illegal admissions into tertiary institutions in Nigeria. First, to introduce, we have in the studio Professor Ishak Oloyede, the JAM registrar. You're welcome to the conversation this morning.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. Also joining us in the studio is Professor Oke Ikechukwu, Executive Director, Development Specs Academy. You are welcome, Prof.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, I also have the pleasure of welcoming here in the studio Jake Epele, CEO, founder, TAF Africa, my age-long friend who decided to unfriend me sometimes.
It's because I can't see you from afar.
Good to have you.
Good morning. Good morning.
And we also have Professor Lilian Salami. She's the Vice Chancellor of the University of Benin and Chairman, Committee of Vice Chancellors of Nigeria. She's joining us via Zoom. Prof, we're very glad that you could join us for this conversation. It means a lot to us, really.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And I miss you, Claire. It's been quite some time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And yes, okay.
Let's kick start
yes.
with Prof, the registrar. Prof, can you just tell us about this illegal platform and why JAM has decided to put a stop to the current practice of, unregistered students into tertiary institutions?
Yes, thank you very much. When we talk about admission now, we have 3 classes of admission. When I say 3 classes in terms of time, prior to 2017, there was no caps. It was manual. We used to do admission by moving from one place to the other, from one local government, from one institution to the other, with the attendant cost and risk. So in 2017, we introduced caps. So we felt that when you introduce new things, you should allow some period. we knew that when you are doing something manually, there will be some problems. So we then created an opportunity that whatever you might not have done well before 2017, let's create a platform. Because at that time, you may say, oh, the paper was missing. Oh, yes, it was admitted, but no record was found. Let us now find a way of regularizing those ones before 2017. But 2017 forward, everybody must be on caps. So inadvertently, we didn't know that we are creating a window for all sorts of things. That's pre-2017. It was necessary, and it has been on for 7 years now. We felt there is need to put an end to that. That's one side. The second category are those people between 2017 and 2020. Because we started in 2017, and we thought all of us were on the same page. Because CAPS will detect. CAPS, one of the purposes of CAPS is that admission can no longer be done by JAMB. No admission, not even one from 2017, can be done from my side, from JAMB. It had to be initiated by admission officer appointed by the institution. And the vice chancellor, rector, and provost must endorse before coming to JAMB. So it had been automated. Even if I need to admit somebody, I will have to speak to not only the VC, the admission officer. Can you consider this person because of A, B, C, D? So it was automated. And of course, the admission officer knows that if he does anything wrong, he will be held responsible. So that's the process. Okay. So we thought everybody was on until 2020, when we started having problem of people complaining that I scored this, but I was supposed to be there. I was on merit list. I was not chosen. So, oh, what's happening? It was then we discovered that some institution from 2017, they just continue what they were doing. They will admit 200 normal quota, but they will admit another 1,000 under the table that are unknown to anybody. Not even known, in some cases, not known to their own proprietors, the owners of the institution, because they are not on record. They are just looking at the formal admission. They are not looking at the informal under the table. When we discovered this, we felt it was serious. So we called the institution concerned. We confirmed that this was done. So we made recommendation to the then Honorable Minister of Education that, look, this is the situation. We should not allow this to go. The Honorable Minister asked us to go and look at it because the number of candidates involved. Then we now wrote to all the institutions, declare your illegal admission. Illegal now, not before 2017. 2017 was still going on. But between 2017 and 2020, all the ones you have done, declare them. So about close to 1 million were then confessed by the institution that yes, I did 20, I did 50. By the time we put them to about 1 million. We then made recommendation to the then Honorable Minister for Education because we had no board at that time. What can we do about this? We felt that we should ask them to be forgiving, but having declared this, we will now find a way of regularizing. But nobody should do it again after 2020. That's the second category, 17 to 2020. The third category is 2021 till date. That's why I have classified them into three. But what we have now discovered is that the 2017 to 2020, yes, Minister gave a waiver on our recommendation, but they must now tell us how are they admitted. And we are now looking at them. Because you admitted them and there is a waiver, does not mean that somebody who had no mathematics should be admitted to engineering. So we are now saying, okay, give us their credentials. And we start looking at them. Many are not willing. Because some of them, you have a situation that somebody had just one advanced level paper and he was admitted for direct entry. And you have somebody who was admitted to medicine without biology. So all those aberrations, we now say, no. Only those who meet, you may not be the what we thought they were avoiding is just cheating those who score higher. But we said that the minister have waived that. All those who are not supposed by ranking to be admitted, we will waive that. But the qualification, particularly the O-level qualification, must be met. Out of this 1 million, maybe we have cleared maybe about 400, 500 to date, because we would go back and tell them. Some of them would say, okay, those students at that time they were not qualified, but now they will go and receipt. And we said no.
Prof,
It's prerequisite. That's the second category. The third category, we now discover that this pre-2017 people, after 2017, some people were admitted even in 2020, and the admission will now be backdated to 2016 in order to meet the waiver. The waiver. Some were admitted in 2021 because you are starting your 2020 session in 2021 or 2022 because of disruption. No, having been aware that it was that session, they started now admitting people and backdating it. Of course, it's 2020 session that we are running. Okay. What we now did, having seen the damages done, is to say, okay, good. Because these candidates, they have no registration at all. It's not a matter of whether they score 10 or score 100. They had no record at all that they even start for UTME. So we now say, okay, for those without registration that we can't even trace, that we are only relying on the institution, we now gave a condition from August 1 to the end of August. Declare them, even if they are not coming now to solve their problem, because many unqualified persons are being mobilized for the NYC. And that also gives room for some clever boys, clever in quote, boys who are now manipulating records and doing all sorts of things. That's why we said these two categories, those who are without registration number, either pre-2017 or between 2017 and 2020, now declare them now or never. Prof, so that's the situation.
Thank you. And in fact, it's sounding to me like a, like a dream. Earlier when I was having a conversation with Damon, I said I've never heard of such, not in my life, you know.
Not to have a registration number.
Yes, you know, to be in the university and not to have a registration number. And I must be careful. Because when I'm speaking where I have my lecturer, you know, I have to be, especially when the lecturer is a lecturer in philosophy, and you know, if you are not logical, you be queried. So, and Professor K. Kechuku was my lecturer in the university, so I have to be logical here, and that's why I would like to start, Prof. I'd like you to explain to us really what constitutes illegal admission, because ordinarily the requirements are there. I mean, you have your credits requirement. You're expected to have sat for, you know, the UTME JAM, and then, you know, I mean, that's the simple understanding. Yeah. Is it because the process had not complied with JAM's process and people are still using a particular process, or is it that the requirements are not there?
Okay, yes. They are all. When you say illegal, anything done outside the law is illegal. The law establishing JAM says that JAM must approve in consultation with the institution all admissions. So any admission done without passing through that process is deemed illegal. That is one that does not comply. But that is even a small aspect of it. The illegality goes beyond that. When you now admit somebody who does not possess what he is supposed to possess, that's another layer of illegality that you are seeing. When you now falsify the records, and there are many of them, that you say, one candidate recently, one of those people being backdated, we followed it up. Said, look, at age 11, you were supposed to be 11 by the time you finish your secondary school. How did it happen? We sent people to Kebbi, where she claimed to have attended the school, with the certificate. We've sent the certificate to the school. This certificate is genuine, they say it's genuine. But here is this child in front of us. Okay, let's go to the institution. It's just that there was a coincidence. There was a genuine person who was bearing that name. So this person was not the person. She never crossed Abuja to Kebbi. Eventually, she confessed on camera that not one, two, three, that she was never in Kebbi, not to talk of attending the school. But she just somebody arranged, got somebody with genuine, but who was bearing that name, and that's how there are all sorts of things are going on. If you send that certificate 10 times to the institution, they will confirm that it's genuine. But it's not in the hand of the right holder.
The right
So
person.
these are some of the problems that we are facing, and the right thing to do is to do the right thing. So, and that is why we are saying all these type of things. And when you talk to a vice chancellor, a provost, a rector, and say this thing happened, you know I was not the VC at that time. You know I was not the thing. So you keep on saying I was not there. So we now want to put an end to it, and because unfortunately, the students are not the culprits, the parents.
Exactly.
When you get these students, and when you see the parents, that's why they are all over the place. They wish to invite the candidate, say no, I must be there, because they will tell the child. But when you are one-on-one with the child will tell you the truth.
Prof,
His mommy, his daddy who arranged it, and so on. That's what
Thank you, sir. Let's bring, before we come back to the studio, let's bring Professor Lillian Salami, who is the Vice Chancellor of University of Benin. Prof, first, I'm going to just put it straight to you. Is your university culprit in this? That's one. And then explain to us how many of such admissions you have. Have you complied?
Okay. First of all, thank you very much for having me again. And I'm sure Professor Oloyede will stand you clear that University of Benin is very, very clean here. We don't have illegally admitted students. But just a way of continuing with this discussion, I think we must begin to look at why the illegality? Why do we have these problems? And I think if we try to answer or give answers to these questions, maybe we'll be able to curb some of the high levels of illegality. I quite agree with my brother, Professor Oloyede, that it's something that we must discontinue. But is it possible under the conditions that we find ourselves? And I am very quick to say no. We may cut it to a reasonable level, but because you look at, for instance, I just got admission, my list of those admitted for 2024, and I have 21,000 students who want to come into University of Benin. And quickly, I can also tell you that over 1,000 of those students scored above 300. And if you also take a consensus of those students, more than 90% of those students also want to read medicine. And then medicine, the council tells you, no, you can't take so many of the students. Now, how else can this student want to get in? Again, like I said, University of Benin is very clear, but they go to lengths to get all kinds of, ways of getting into the system. Underage ones want to come in through part-time. When we entered the system, part-time, you had to be 35, for instance, before you could come in as part-time. But we see them as young as 15 in part-time programs. Of course, those ones are not wanting to graduate, under the part-time program. They want to use that as a leverage into coming into the university. Now, the pressure of, parents, like Professor Oloyede said, everyone wants their child to read medicine. So whatever you need to do, however you need to do it, get that child into the system. And so you have that one. The society counts too much on book qualification, paper qualification. And if you don't have paper qualification, you're not going to be, recognized as somebody who should really contribute, even when we know the high levels of unemployment and all of that stuff. So you have inequality, you have inequity, all kinds of issues are coming in. And until we begin to look at some of these problems and these issues, how do we curb, how do we reduce them? If we don't do that, I must say that Professor Oloyede, when he goes for something, he goes for something. Yes, we are going to try as much as possible to reduce illegality, but not to the point of maybe eliminating it. And I can bet my last penny on that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. It is impossible to eliminate it. Okay, let's bring in let's bring in Professor Ikechukwu now. How do we begin to redress this illegality problem issue in the university admission tertiary institutions? Because I mean, just like from what she said and from what Prof also said, it can be reduced, but it cannot be totally eliminated. So how do we address the challenges, the problems, especially coming from the parents and all that?
Since you've brought in the parents, the first point to note is that it's multidimensional. It's not a question of illegality. It's also a question of immorality. It's also a question of wrong national orientation. It's also a question of the failure of parenting. Because by the time I assist my child, like Prof has pointed out, first, I put him in a special center to pass. In other words, I've primed him to understand that what you demonstrate as your ability doesn't have to be that. I've wrecked his character from the beginning. That's number one. Now I arrange admission, challenges arise, I work with him to structure the lies. I've destroyed that child morally. You cannot expect him later in future to be responsible, whether in public office or wherever, because he's gotten accustomed to do whatever you can and get away with it. I'm a YX certificate holder. That's a claim. He knows he cannot answer 2 questions on any of the subjects. So that moral element is there. Then the question of illegality, I'd like to place on record that it's not new. It's over 40 years on. JAMB was set up as a kind of, joint admissions. Before then, you apply to any university, you could spend 10 times the money. You get 3 admissions and take 1, and you deny others because the school was expecting you. So 2 things arose from that. Number 1, structured engagement, and also a platform for measuring the output of national human capital at that very high level is JAMB that made it possible. Now, why do I say the problem is not new? Go back to 1981. Prof, maybe I should mention the university. Go ahead. Go back to 1981. In 1981, Professor Abdullahi was the Vice Chancellor of ABU. The academic secretary was Malam Abdullahi Musa. His secretary was Mayor Yivo. The secretary was Juan Chinedu. The HEO was I.I. Musa Garba was in charge of the processing of admissions. Was not by Musa Garba, but that's the layout of ABU at the time. Now, the registrations for new students for that year were handled by 2 young boys. I'll say young boys because they were both, none of them was yet 20. Bala Dauda and Clement Nzenagu. And I suspect that Claire will know Clement Nzenagu because that Clement was her teacher with a different name. Oh, yes, that used to be my name. And so you will get the admissions list because the policy at the time, at least what I could recall, was that you would have 10% for a certain part of the country and 90% for some other part. So no matter what you scored, if that 10% had been reached for your state, you're on your own. And I recall a particular student who was admitted for sociology on the merit list, Jide Ojo. He couldn't be registered because of his state of origin. Was from Oyo State and all of that.
Okay, this our Jide Ojo now.
No, not our
Not very likely.
That's what
He couldn't have been coming for admission in 1981. There are several Jide Ojos. I taught one in Unilag. Dr. Ojo was like, no, couldn't have been. So now, what was the point of all of this? You're on the merit list, you will not be registered because you're not involved. Secondly, besides the merit list and the subsequent list, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 others, not from JAMB, not connected with JAMB, and so they'll say, okay, is he on the list? Okay, let him go. The letter is from JAMB, let him register University of JAMB. Now, that was the dominant thing in many places. That's why I say it's not new. But the good element for me in the something ABU was doing then, if you failed WAEC, you keep rewriting. But ABU set up a school of remedial studies for those with weak WAEC. Then School of Basic Studies. So the certificate from the School of Remedial Studies became the equivalent of a WAEC because it's a make-up course. Brilliant as far as I'm concerned, because you must address the disadvantages of the people. Now, with the remedial certificate, you qualify for SBS. If you get SBS certificate, then you are qualified for direct entry. Challenges were also there because it was all produced internally. The IJMB exam syllabus was constructed within there. I remember Professor Yoware was still there at the time and all of that. And you could get the results printed. And so in the course of that registration, and it's cyclo-styled. So you look at this thing looks a bit funny. There was this guy who, because later, apart from FAS, we had to go register business students in Gelesu, Congo campus. This fellow, he kept on and on, was so praised. I kept telling Bala, this doesn't look. To cut a long story short, it was Professor Abdul Razak. That's why you say you've had and you still have brilliant, committed, responsible scholars who are fathers. Abdul Razak left his office in Gelesu to come down to Samaru campus, to go to School of Basic Studies and to get the original copy of the result and all of that. Now, coming round to all of this. Part of the crisis must be seen at several levels. At the level of the academic staff, because when you say academic and non-academic, they all function within the university. The university system is designed to retain the best, to admit everybody, but only retain the best. Because it's from the best you get the academic feedstock for knowledge advancement. Now, at the level of academic staff, most of the best don't stay back. There's no university that can claim to have retained its 1% of its best graduating students in the last 20 years. Better paying sectors of the economy have drawn them out. Then, in connection with all of that, so 3 things. The university is now seen by people working there as a place where you make money. Just like people who go to the National Assembly see it as a place where you spend 5 billion to get in, because by the time you finish, even though you know that in 4 years what you're supposed to get is maybe 180 million, you're sure you will go away with 19 billion, and they're successful. So the decay goes on. And then at the level of national leadership, at the level of traditional leadership, at the level of religious leadership, you know that maybe 13 months ago, I couldn't quite fix my motorcycle, which I was using. I go to the State House of Assembly. And 9 months later, I've just built a 149 million naira house. So the point of all of this being, the decay has migrated into the citadel of learning. The solution is, that's why I say there's a moral element. The solution is simple, and that's what the registrar is doing. Okay, put the law on the table, enforce it, insist on it, but most importantly, communicate what you're doing so you get the moral support of Nigerians. So he won't be alone, they'll be chewing him and we wouldn't know. No, every bit of this must be on the public domain.
On the table. Okay, Professor Ikechukwu, thank you. And, whenever you talk, we listen with rapt attention. Because philosophers, speak in variables, so we get the meat of what you're saying. Thank you. Jake, you've listened to everyone, and of course, particularly Professor Lilian Salami. But first of all, what happened prior 2017? Admissions were done manually, according to as Prof already. So probably you could excuse all the inconsistencies and the gaps and all that. But when JAM came in, JAM was created to cleanse and create a system. So JAM introduced caps just for transparency and equity in admission processes and all that. But JAM has decided to waive the gaps prior 2017. But is bothered about what is happening among students who got admission between 2017 and 2020. And that's falsification of their ages and other biometrics. Now, what do you think will be the weight of, this illegal activities, not just on our educational system, but on the candidates themselves and on our national integrity?
Well, first of all, I sat here and I was listening with rapt attention, like you did, and but also to say that the likes of Professor Loyode is very rare. Having the moral audacity and courage to come out and put this kind of information on the national, not just on the national television, but nationally, it's very encouraging that that we still have people that can fight for justice and equity. But let me answer your question by trying to paint a philosophical picture. No, I know that Prof will mark me at the end of the day, But let's see. Whenever you see a crack on a wall, and you get a medicine man and say, please go and mend the crack. And then 2 months after you come back, that crack surfaces. You get a medicine man, go and mend the crack. 2 months after you come back, the crack surfaces. The problem is not with the crack. The problem is with the foundation. In the first place, why did we try to compromise an illegality at the starting point? When these things were detected, it should have been sorted out. Because in
other words, why did JAM grant the waivers?
Exactly. Okay. Prof, I know that there'll be very beautiful argument, all right? But here's the point, whatever you compromise to gain, you will eventually lose. It's a systemic error that we allowed to happen at the first place. And I thank Prof, because you see, I think it was, Prof, quote me if I'm wrong, I think it was Martin Luther who said, the time is always right to do what is right. So pointedly, this is what we need to do to correct it. The era of compromise should be eradicated completely. If Jake, like Prof said, we are talking about the student, what about their parents? What about their ward that would do anything? What about those in State House and in the sub-national that will write letter and say, admit this child, I don't care? We need to drive and drill this advocacy, implementation, calling it what it is, to the grassroots and find out where is the problem. Because if you keep treating the symptoms, you will still have resurfacing of the illness. And so this is the time. Thank you, Prof, because what you're doing is what we in the civil society space should be doing. We need to take this advocacy and bring it to a point where those that are behind this will be ashamed to continue this kind of practice. That's why we are turning out students that looks like primary school that can't even write letters.
But if we had accurate data of candidates prior to 2017 admitted illegally, would that have helped to check? And therefore, JAM would be in a position to reprimand those who are caught falsifying their bios.
I mean, data will help. I mean, data will help. Look at what Professor Leo they have done. JAM has been totally transformed from analog JAM that we used to know to a digital JAM that we need to. And at his age, I was telling him, I said, bro, you're doing what some of us cannot do. You understand? Are you talking about what JAM has done? Prof, it's laughable. No, wait. It's laughable. It's laughable because Prof has worked with us and we established a special examination for persons with disability void of all these issues.
Okay.
So when we are struggling, our community is struggling to get into the university the right way, some universities are rejecting us. No, you can't read this, you can't do this, because you can't see, and perpetuating.
Why the discrimination?
Say?
Why the discrimination?
Well, unfortunately, they said to you, they can look at you, the same thing, I fought the police until they admitted a person with albinism, and that boy is the assistant commissioner of police now, you know, they look at you and say, oh no, you can't do it on the surface. The man's intellect, you can't see it on my physical appearance, you know. So that is the problem, you know. And Prof, you have just started a crusade. It must not die. People like me, I will join you. I will take this up. We must drill this until and sir, please, I don't agree that we cannot eradicate this. Yes, they will say, well, it's not real. We can eradicate illegality. We can eradicate corruption.
I like Prof to speak more on the age falsification thing, because it's a big issue. If students are now going just to, you know, get the waivers, just so I can be part of the 2017 waivers, and you now go to falsify your age and you buy
yes. If we want to talk about this age falsification, yes, we need to get it right. We need to know the basis of all this. Recently, something happened. Many people are saying the Honorable Minister for Education said people below 16 should not be admitted, people below 18 should not be admitted, and so on. They are not saying the whole truth.
Okay.
Yes, we need to know how and why. Number one, we have national policy on education. We have currently now the 6th edition. The first national policy on education was 1977. It was reviewed in 1981. Then the 3rd edition in 1989. Then you have the 4th edition 2004, 5th edition 2007, and 2013 the 6th edition, 2013-14. Yes, 2013 was published in 2014. So we have that one, that's the current one. And it specifies clearly the age. And it says clearly, when you look at it, if you go to section 1, the preface of the National Policy on Education, it says it clearly that the Nigeria education system is structured into the following. 1, early child care and development, age 0 to 4. Then it also said that there should also be preschool, age 5 to 6. Then it goes on to say there would now be primary education, and all this basic education should be between age 5 to 15. And what that means, it breaks it down to say there will be pre-primary between 5 and 6, 1 year. Then from age 6 to age 12, yes, there will be primary education. And junior secondary education between age 12 and 15, specified. And it is clear there. And it says 1 year of pre-primary, section 12, 6 years of primary, and 3 years of junior secondary. But some people will say that's mere policy. And you know how these policies are made. It's not just that people gather. It will go to National Education Research and Development Council, will first of all formulate. And after formulating, they will go through all the states of the federation that they will discuss it. It will come back to the council. 20 years ago, I was on the board of the National Education Research and Development Council when we were doing 2004 version of the National Education Policy. We went around all the states of the federation. The current minister of the FCT, Barrister Wike, was the one who signed 2013 that we are talking about now as the current edition, as the Minister of Education. You go through this. After you have gone through this, you go to what we call JCCE, comprising of all permanent secretaries, heads of educational institutions, principals of secondary school. They will now meet and consider all this and make recommendation to the National National Council on Education. National Council of Education comprises basically the Minister of Education and the Commissioners for Education.
What if you are, told that this policy, it's not realistic? I mean, it's not in tandem with what is realistic.
Yes,
and that it doesn't cover.
I will now tell you
smartness.
that is even the preliminary. Somebody can say it's just a policy. Commissioners of education, they decided. In all this, you cannot say it is not all inclusive. But forget about policy. UBEC Act is an act of the National Assembly today, 2004 Act, stipulates in section 15 that primary education is for somebody between the age of 6 and 15. That is basic education, between age 6 and 15. And it specified that age 5 to 6 for preschool, age 6 to 12 for primary, and age 12 to 15 for junior. How will somebody now say, I am 15-year-old and I've graduated, I've finished secondary school, I'm in the university? Which means he had been 4 years ahead of his mates. So there is no way it could happen.
But we have so many of such.
We have so many of them because of corruption in the system. Many of them, when you look at them critically, it's not true. The most guilty are the teachers, because they believe that because they are teachers, their children, the advantage, we cannot get to political power and start to steal money, at least we can have advantage. All sorts of things that people argue about, that, if I cannot steal money, I think I can steal some other advantages. That type of thing is there. The elite who want to use their children to decorate their own CV, they want to be fathers of doctors and so. VC of Uniben was talking about 300 and so on. The class can only take 300. Even if there are 3,000, take the best of them. And when we say the best, we are not saying merit should be 100%. That's what people don't know. Okay. It must be all inclusive. The merit is just 45%, even in federal institutions. Merit is just 45%. There are other criteria like catchment, educational aid. You add all this. But the process had been automated. So when we are talking about age falsification and so on, people are doing all this not just to give age advantage to their children, but also to give them records that do not belong to them. That's the dimension that some people do not see.
Because that's why most of them go for this age declaration.
Yes, and you see most of them. Why don't we ask ourselves, why are you in this age when there is National Population Commission registration of the, why is it that 90% of our people are coming to with declaration of age?
Yeah,
because they want, and they are changing the age so many times. So when they want to come in, they change the age. When they want to work, they change the age. And they are bastard. You see, it's like to see a policeman and you say, Peter, and he said, Oga, you know my name? Not knowing that his name is written on his name tag. So many of them who are doing this type of thing, changing the names of these their children, changing the dates, they do not know, date of birth, they do not know that why these same students are registering for NECO exam, why they are registering for WAEC exam. They have indicated the age, and we have access to this age. By the time you bring the two together, somebody who declared that he was 15 when he was writing NECO, suddenly you find the person out saying, I'm 19 at the time I was writing NECO. All these, they do not add up. And we have the capacity to detect. That's why we are telling them. Okay. I have about 500 applications now since we started this. In the past, they used to bring age down for the purpose of NYSC. But now, in the last 2 months, what you have is avalanche of application. People have 13, 14, now claiming to be 18 in order to meet the requirement. And that's why we made the announcement last Sunday that the Honorable Minister of Education had graciously agreed that for this year, it will be 16. So you don't need to go and tamper with
Yeah,
your
age.
so that's why I'm asking them now, come and withdraw this your false affidavit that we have, because we wouldn't approve, because we are calling on WAEC, we are calling on ECO, give us their actual age that they declare, and when we put the two together, you know that the affidavits are false. So this is
Why did it take so long for JAM to come out
Uh,
on this
you
issue?
see, you don't solve all the same is good. The same Nigerian who will say, why are you doing this? If we are taking all these things together and there had been problems, say, why don't you go gradually? The same Nigeria, they will say, why don't you take one at a time? Look, even in the nation now, everybody, they are blaming government that, oh, when you took the issue of petrol subsidy and the currency at the same time, why don't you take them one after the other? Whereas some other people say, let's see our problem and face it once and for all. What we wanted to do was to go gradual. We can't solve, even now, there are other problems that we are not touching. Because if you have to bring all of them together at one point, then there will be a problem. By the time we introduce caps,
Okay.
we were facing the issue of how to placate university staff who will be losing night allowance, DTA. You know, by the time they travel for examination, when we are doing it manually, they have to be paid for traveling. By automating, you have eliminated all that. So we are still struggling for how to make them accept the automation. If at that time you are creating another problem of age of another thing, so you need to take the issue step by step.
Okay.
So there are still
So
even now other problems,
Okay.
but we will be taking them as they come. Like this issue of age now, we are advising people, don't compromise the future of your children. Don't tamper with their age. Let them go. The issue of my child is better, my child is exceptionally good. How many exceptionally good do we have? So let us
Thank you,
be
Prof.
sincere and do the right thing. If we are corrupt, we shouldn't introduce the next generation into it. Let us say it will stop at this level. And that's our campaign. That's why JAMB is saying, look, gentlemen, and the students themselves, don't allow you can inherit the friends of your parents. Don't inherit their enemies.
Okay,
So,
thank you
It's
so
a
much.
big place for us.
So let's bring in Professor Lilian Salami, the Vice Chancellor of University of Benin, who is the chairman of the Committee of Vice Chancellor. Let's hear from you. What do you discuss at your meeting of Vice Chancellor, and how do we address this decay?
Well, thank you very much. The reason why that committee or association, and Professor Leide was one of those pioneers too there. He's always everywhere. Is really to come up to share ideas, to share problems, challenges, and then curate some of those ideas from experiences, and then take them to your university, localize them, and see how you can do better. And that, I think, is the main thrust there. So we come together. We're about 272 now in the different layers of education. So that is what we do. Now, do we have issues? Do we have challenges? And there are lots and lots of challenges. Professor Leide just picked on one now, the age issue. We who are practitioners can tell you for sure that we're beginning to have that effect, a negative effect that the underage is having in the system. First of all, we know that they are not socially, emotionally ready to get into the system, but parents will push them here. And then you begin to ask yourself, as vice chancellors, as lecturers, are you going to babysit these neonates? And you don't have that capacity to do that. So we have issues with that. We're beginning to see mental health issues as a result of these children are not quite ready for the dynamics and challenges of tertiary institution. So we have that. We have the aspect of legality. What do you do? A child, and I will give you a very quick example, in my situation here. Two young children, of course, maybe trying themselves, impregnated one, and then we were trying to trace the young man on holidays who did this. And then only to find that his next of kin was his best friend, because he didn't understand what next of kin was. So we had to now go back to the students, to the friend, to be able to trace. And here are two little neonates who were pushed into the system. So we have to now become guidance. So you have guardianship problem is there. You have, how do you control them? You have, so there are so many issues. And then, of course, we don't want to go into the issues of how do we run the system where we are not properly funded, all of that issue. So vice chancellors and universities are actually going through a phase of, mammoth challenges. But we are sure that with time and then with tenacity and then the kind of persons that we are, that we'll be able to navigate our way out of all of this. But truly, we have issues in the tertiary system, especially the university system. So I just touched a little bit of, the age issues that we're hearing. We are practitioners, and we can tell you for sure, all those aspects, we are beginning to see them in the system, where you bring people who are not quite ready, they are not progressive in their career because they don't even know what they want to do. So at the end of the day, they turn out and they go out there and bloat the unemployment rate because eventually they are not progressive because your parents have pushed them in too early, too little into the system. So we have lots and lots of problems that can take the whole day in terms of what are the challenges facing tertiary institutions that we discuss at the CVC. But again, like I said, we come there to put our heads together, share experiences, and see how we can navigate through all these mammoth challenges. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Professor Salami. Thank you. I was going to ask you what you thought about the 1 month, deadline that JAM has given. If that was sufficient for institutions to comply, but I'm instructed to call for a break at this time, which is appropriate. So we'll take that break, and when we come back, you'll probably give us a quick answer. Thank you for joining us again, and you're welcome to the final lap of our conversation. And I'll quickly bring into this conversation Professor Okechukwu. Yes, Ikechukwu, to speak to us, because if we look at what is happening, I don't know if there's a way to get JAM and the institution, because students are not entirely to blame here. You also have the institutions, who issued the admission. Yes. Should JAM take over the responsibility of giving the admission? Because the institutions give the admission first. So how do we reconcile this?
No, we cannot recommend that JAM should take over the responsibility, because that would raise issues about autonomy, the integrity of tertiary institutions, and it will diminish in public perception the known capacities, because that's a platform for producing the highest level of human capital for national development. It should manage its own processes. That's number one. Number two, why are we having the challenges? Let's look at a few reasons. One of the reasons is the carrying capacity of the universities. Now, the Vice Chancellor has told us that she has 3,000 applications. I'll probably be able to take maybe 400, something, 300.
300.
Yes. Now, let us suppose that this Vice Chancellor has a faculty of medicine with maybe 2 colleges. In other words, that there's the College of Medicine that can take 3,000. It will address the issue of carrying capacity. And that's the challenge of most of our universities. And sometimes I think part of the measures being taken to address it is the creation of new universities. That's not, in my view, investment in a university. It's investment in education infrastructure for university education. How do you make substantive investment? That money, you're going to build a university for about 5 years or more. Within that 5 years, you've not produced 1 graduate. But here is Uniben in existence that can extend its facilities and do further recruitment. And in the next academic session, it will take in more students. That will raise carrying capacity. But we are celebrating the emergence of infrastructure that will deliver nothing and yet is on record. And a lot of money would have gone into it. So carrying capacity is one thing. Then parenting, as strange as it may sound, is another. Most of the time, we parents are eager to announce and advertise our children. Oh, Claire, do you know that my daughter just graduated at 14? I expect that by the time she's 19, she would have gotten her doctorate degree. Like Prof said here, is my CV as a parent? I will damage a life permanently in order to show off this child. Parents, it's not coming on TV. Nobody graduates after secondary school in my house and goes to university the next year. All my children, and 4 are graduates, working, some. You finish secondary school, you do a gap year. In that gap year, you work for 3 months or 6 on minimum wage. That's number one. You learn a skill. If you're a girl, you choose between that. You can plait hair, which will fetch you about $50 for a 2-hour job outside this country, where you are. So by the time, and you run the home, you cut down ShopRite, you go to Wuse Market, you go to all those strange places, and what does that lead to? By the end of that 1 year, you will find a school. I won't find a school for you. You choose your course. I will not tell you what to study, but the thing you
some will tell you that's where those jobs are available. The hair plating you are talking about over there is available. But what about the students here?
No, that's the point I'm making. Supposing you finish learning that and you're schooling in Uniben, you think a student will go and pay 8,000 in what do you call it? Igboba Hill, instead of paying 3,000 in the hostel for a fellow student.
Yes.
Now that's the point. But the essence of it is, we are so desperate to have our children announced as graduates at a very early age that we forget that they need to also be human beings. Can they manage relationships? You had the Vice Chancellor narrating the crisis of little children. They haven't finished growing up. And all these people who are jumping into school at that age, what kind of socialization have they had? You use vehicles to carry them to school during primary and secondary. Some of them are not studying where you're living, so they go by air. They are totally disconnected from their generation. And that's the children. And they're also the absolute minority. They are not equipped. So 3 things on the table. Carrying capacity has to be increased for existing universities. That should be a major focus on funding. Secondly, if JAMB doesn't have it, it should be made available to JAMB. Extra emergency funding for national conversation on the damage being done to young Nigerians by the antics of parents, by the crisis in the system. JAMB needs advocacy that will go down. It's not sufficient. This is very good, but then we must think of access. We must know that the centers of power and communication devolve progressively. You have the local government level. They can begin with a regional agreement, a regional roundtable, drill it down, and then get ANCOPs, get Ministry of Education, get all platforms, the activists. It's not, we can't just be talking about all kinds of rights without forgetting that our humanity is disappearing. So finally on this, and in respect of the crisis on the table, what do we want to achieve as a people? Responsible citizenship, responsible parenting, a stable society. Now, in that, you also have wrong mentors at the political level. That's part of the crisis. Has anybody thought of a conference for education secretaries in the country? They are the ones in charge of education at the local government level. We had one in 2006. Every single one of them was brought to 700 and something in Abuja for weeks. Now, they need to understand that the assumption that your job as a teacher is a means of livelihood is a dominant consciousness. Your job as a teacher, you're standing in loco parentis. You're in the process of molding a new set of human beings. You are a mentor and a guide at the same time. How many people still appreciate that? So let's deal substantively with things that can be done. Reduce the opportunity. Because when we were at the JAMB office, JAMB got, I think, nearly 1.6 million admissions, out of which 600 or something has been accepted. Question. Each year that you have more than 400,000 people who can get in, where do they go to? When we were growing up, there were vocational schools, there were technical. Those options no longer exist. Therefore, a much larger population of young Nigerians are moving into, with a lot of energy, are moving into criminality. And that's the fact of the matter. And the last point on that is, go to the 2006 census. From that figure, how many ought to be in secondary school? 33.9. How many were confirmed to be in school by the school census? 6.4. Therefore, the beggars will always be there. The urchins will always be there. And we need to do something about that.
We need to do something.
Just before you bring him, 2 things that you have said, 2 fundamental recommendations. One, carrying capacity should be looked into, that universities carrying capacity. And then a national conversation. JAMB should hold a national... Yes.
because it's about funding.
Okay, be enabled to hold a national conversation on what is happening, on the effects of all of this. I think that's very fundamental.
Let's bring in Jake now.
I was going to take it on the heels of that, you know, because there needs to be a national orientation and reorientation. There's like I said, this is just the beginning of this advocacy. There's a need to communicate more to these parents, to the students, and also I think that we must find a way to hold one or two persons accountable.
The issue of sanction.
Exactly, and use them as an scapegoat, you know, because this thing is not going to stop if every time somebody is caught, you know, we treat the symptoms. Oh, don't worry. Okay, don't do it again. Go and sin no more.
Yeah.
You understand? And the person is like asking a Christian who, oh, he repents because there's going to be punishment, but there is no conversion. You know, there's no conversion. You know, so repentance without conversion, you will go back to the same thing. Exactly. So there is a need to continue to give proper information to people. There's a need to continue to drill. And like I keep saying, I say Oluyede is a hero because not too many civil servants will come out to bring this kind of issues to the public. He will be afraid of losing his job. But it has to be done, you know. And then there's a need to, for instance, the JOG, which I'm a member, the special, and people don't know this. JAM has established a special examination for persons with disability. There's a gradual growth of that special to the fact that African countries are now going to come to learn what we have done, you know. And so there is a need to continue to build the proper system that we will be proud of at the end of the day. There's no point to rush any child into school and then the child will come out half-baked, educated individual. It doesn't take us anywhere. You know, I think also the civil society, we have a role, you know, to play in this. Civil society that is in education space and all that, they have budget for communication, that can organize this conference. Professor Leo, they cannot do anything and everything all by himself.
Yeah.
You know, so we need to team up, you know, using the wonderful initiatives and ideas of Professor K and the rest of them, and the Vice Chancellor, you know, to ensure that we have a credible system that is foolproof. Every time we create a good thing, the wrong people will come and break that system and corrupt it. And then we pat them on the back and say, okay, all right, don't worry, okay, let's see what we can do. I think, Prof, we need to do better.
We need to do better. And civil societies too, they have to. Because
it's key. It's key. I equally hold ourselves accountable for this. And that all we do is go and design a project and all that. And we're not looking at the impact of that
most
project.
Of the civil society
there's something we've done. We'll be, in the next 2 years, South Africa, which used to be Albino, will be 20 years. I have gone, I don't want to mention the name, I've gone to a very big institution, you know, and they're doing 20 years of impact assessment of what this organization, you know, because when people say, oh, you've done so, what have I done that others cannot do? You know, they say there's finally, man's greatest enemy. You know man's greatest enemy? Your last accomplishment.
Thank you.
Your last accomplishment.
You know, when the issue of age limit was announced recently after JAM's policy meeting, you know, we had a lot of people came on air to talk about it, to, you know, knock it. People started citing, you know, video clips of children who have become PhD holders at the age, you know, 21, at age 19 and all that. And JAM has bowed to, you know, pressure to say, okay, if you are 16, you can still get admission and all that. And Professor Salami, you did say that it should be almost impossible to really, do away with illegal admissions. But Professor Ikechukwu has given us, at least two fundamental, things we could look at to begin to address this issue. What are your thoughts about the solutions that Professor Ikechukwu mentioned? And what do you think, that percentage that you think will be left, how can that be addressed?
I think Professor Ikechukwu's recommendations are quite germane, and I think they would find a way of, amending our problems. But I think I also want to state clearly here that we cannot all be talking from different angles and thinking that we will achieve so many things. We must come together as a team, and I have always advocated that we have Education Summit where everyone comes in to this umbrella, and then we begin to profile solutions. What one person is saying in another corner, the activists are saying, sometimes these don't jive, they don't come together. We must talk together. And again, to buttress Professor Ikechukwu's case, parents, I think, are really the culprits here. And we must begin to look at where we can marry the perception of parents and because how do you now bring a 15-year-old and say that 15-year-old has committed a crime when he or she has not been enabled by the parents? So we're trying to live our own lives through our children. We're trying to, like Professor Loede said, write our CVs using our children as, items on the CV. I have the son who graduated with medicine at age 18. Yes, we are not saying we don't have gifted children here, but I don't think that is what is playing out here. We are just pushing these children and over-pushing them. So my take here is, yes, Prof has a profound solution, but I think let us have a bigger umbrella. Like he said, if Professor Loede can move this, where we have summits and come together and really address issues facing us in terms of the education system. And I think that is where we would go, and that would be more comprehensive in dealing with the issues facing us. We have moments of challenges, like I have said. I also want to say to Professor Loede, the moratorium that you have given, I don't think the August 1 month is going to play this. There is no need coming back after the end of August and saying we give another month. I think you should please extend this, give at least 2-3 months so that people can fully clear all of this, rather than give 1 month and with all the the challenges that chief executives are dealing with in the tertiary institutions, you might not be able to get results within the 30 days. So I plead with you to please increase that to about 3 months, by which time we'll be done, and I'm sure we'll be all totally clean of these admissions.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor Salami. There, you have spoken on behalf of other vice chancellors, and I think your point is well noted. Thank you, and also called for these the summit, educational summit. I want to ask, because she just pleaded for more months. For instance, the universities that fail to meet the deadline, what happens?
Let me start by thanking. And of course, I'm not surprised. As chairman committee of vice chancellor and ABCN, she must speak from that point of view. Let me say clearly, JAMB or the Ministry of Education had not succumbed to the pressure. The decision taken televised. The decision taken was, all of us agreed, and the law, I've read the law to you this morning. The law says 18. But the plea of one of the vice chancellors, which the minister agreed to, was, don't let us start this year. Give notice for next year. Let's start 16 years this year, which of course any normal person would not contest 16, because at 16 you are supposed to be at SS1.
Yeah.
So if they now say at 16, let's take that. Nobody is contesting that. Unless somebody who said it's not, something is wrong somewhere. CH 16 will be the minimum that anybody. But you say from next year, the law will be enforced. That's what the minister said. It's not out of the minister said 18. Vice chancellors, they were there because we are a democratic body. They pleaded with the minister, and the minister agreed that we submit it to vote, and the vote that was taken televised was 16 years for this year, and from next year 18 years as prescribed by the law. The second one,
we have 60 seconds.
About 1 month.
Yes.
1 month that we are talking about is 7 years and 1 month. We gave the notice 7 years ago. So we are now just saying that because in 2017 we say clear it within 3 months, clear it within 4 months. 7 years later we say 1 month. This 1 month is 1 month. And what that means is that if we go beyond that 1 month, we are going to mess things up. And people, of course, you have started blaming me. Why are you not firm? So let us start being firm. And you said the right thing to do, the right thing is the right time. The right time is now. Because they had 7 years. If you cannot do something for 7 years, then 2 months cannot be though the Yoruba would say that is something that does not really matter. Is what will end up killing the child. So it's 1 month. And again, the Honorable Minister for Health tried to solve this problem of capacity, particularly vis-a-vis medical people. He obtained the approval of the president and communicated doubling the capacity of medical schools. The deans and provosts of colleges of education wrote to say, JAMB don't implement because there is no facility on ground to accommodate those things. So while I'm having directive from the Ministry of Health, and when I got that, I sent it to my parent ministry. This approval of the president coming from Ministry of Health, and they say yes. Since the president has approved, go ahead. But the operators are saying, don't send to you. And I'm not going to do the admission. You know the admission has to be recommended from the institutions. The institution will not recommend that. Prof. So the carrying capacity, my own suggestion is this. Federal government has started what is good. But I don't think they are following it up. Establishing specialized institutions like the 6 universities of health sciences that were recently established is a good way to go. But I do not think they are being adequately funded. Okay. The second aspect is expanding the existing university, the facilities. I believe that Unibank can take double, University of Ibadan can take double, University of Ilorin, but let government put some money into expansion of the facilities, not just the figure. The Minister of Health saying double is a good thing, but it cannot be operationalized without proper
10
funding.
seconds, 1 sentence.
10 seconds. I'm not saying the federal government should increase admissions. You can admit 9 million people into this room. I'm saying increase the size of the space. That means within 1 year you can construct extra faculty buildings, employ more staff, then take in more students.
Thank you very much, Professor Ikechukwu.
Money should come from government, not just the university doesn't have it.
Thank you so much. We are totally run out of time now. Let me just thank Professor Ishakole, the JAM Registrar. Thank you so much. Professor Ikechukwu, thank you so much. Jack, thank you so much.
Prof, let's do the conference. We'll do the conference.
Professor Salami, thank you so much for joining us on today's conversation. This is where we draw the curtain. It is Good Morning Nigeria. Thank you so much for joining us and have a wonderful day. My name is Ademola Adeoye.
And I'm Claire Adilabu Abuja. That's it tomorrow. Bye-bye.